Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe. When I first got married, I thought my life was complete. My husband was hardworking, responsible, and I believed that was all I needed to feel fulfilled. But over the years, as his job demanded more travel and his presence at home grew less frequent, I began to feel an emptiness I couldn't ignore. At first, I told myself it was normal, that many wives adjust to husbands being away for days or weeks. Still, the silence of the house, the lack of attention, and the feeling of being invisible to the man I once adored began to weigh heavily on me. I tried to distract myself with chores, family gatherings, even hobbies, but there was no hiding from the reality that I was lonely. I loved my son deeply, yet watching him grow into a young man who carried the same posture, voice, and mannerisms as his father made the absence even sharper. He reminded me of the man I missed, and though I never admitted it, those reminders stirred something unsettling in me. It wasn't until one quiet evening, when the loneliness felt unbearable, that my son did something unexpected, something that left me shaken in ways I never imagined. That evening felt different from the start, though I couldn't explain why. I was sitting quietly, lost in thought, when my son joined me without saying much. He looked at me with a kind of awareness I wasn't used to seeing from him, almost as if he could sense the weight on my shoulders. Instead of brushing off my mood, he asked if I was okay and genuinely waited for an answer. The concern in his tone caught me off guard. And for the first time in a long while, I allowed myself to open up. I told him how hard it was being alone so often, how it felt to live with someone who was rarely there. He listened carefully, not with impatience or distraction, but with a level of attention I hadn't felt from anyone in years. His words were simple, but they carried warmth, reassurance, and something that lingered deeper than ordinary comfort. When his hand brushed mine, I didn't pull away, even though I knew I should have. The connection felt safe and dangerous at the same time, like a boundary was being quietly tested. And part of me, the part starved of affection, didn't resist. His hand lingered a moment longer than it should have. And in that pause something unspoken shifted between us. I felt a rush of emotions I couldn't control. Confusion, guilt, but also an undeniable longing that I had buried for so long. I told myself to move, to create space, yet I stayed. His eyes met mine and held them in a way that felt far too grown, far too knowing, and yet I didn't look away. My heart pounded as though I was caught doing something forbidden even before anything truly happened. When his fingers tightened slightly around mine, I should have stopped him, but instead I leaned closer, surrendering to the moment. The distance I had lived with for years collapsed in an instant, replaced by closeness I didn't know I craved this much. Every part of me screamed that it was wrong, that I was crossing a line that could never be erased, but I silenced that voice and let myself fall. What began as comfort turned into something far heavier, a release of years of loneliness and unmet needs. By the time it was over, silence filled the room again, but it was no longer ordinary silence. It was loaded, heavy, impossible to ignore. I couldn't close my eyes that night without replaying everything in my mind. The weight of what had just happened pressed on me harder with each passing hour. I wasn't only a wife who had betrayed her husband. I was a mother who had crossed a line she never thought possible. Morning light didn't bring peace, it brought more shame. My son barely looked at me at breakfast, his silence telling me he carried the same confusion and regret I felt. The distance between us suddenly felt greater than ever, even though only hours before it had vanished completely. I kept asking myself how I allowed loneliness to drive me into such a dangerous place, how I ignored every instinct that should have stopped me. The guilt spread through me like fire, reminding me of the vows I had broken and the sacred trust one had shattered. I wondered whether confessing to my husband would destroy everything, or whether keeping the secret would eat away at me until there was nothing left. I can't erase what happened, and I don't know if I'll ever forgive myself. All I'm left with now is the question, what would anyone else do if they were?